24-14, you guys go on the field defensively. Through the first 6 weeks, you make those situations stand up. What was the difference Saturday night that you didn't make it stand up?
Yeah, it was disappointing. We were up by 10, and then they went on the 74, 75-yard drive. I think it was 13 plays, and they ate 5 minutes off the clock. It was disappointing at that point in the game. I think that, as you go back and you look at everything, you're always trying to look for reasons why, right? So everything starts with me. And I thought they had a very good game plan coming in. They did some things that we needed to adjust to, but we didn't do a good enough job adjusting to them. I think they kept us off balance a lot during the night. That particular drive that you're talking about, there wasn't a lot of great third down opportunities. I think there was 1 3rd and 5 that we didn't capitalize on in getting off the field, but it was leaky yardage. There was a couple of big explosive plays in there, one being a quarterback run for, I think, 20 yards. And then anytime, that you're giving up those type of explosive plays, the chance of them scoring goes up because you're obviously, extending drives, getting first downs, eating the clock. And all of those things happened at that point in the game where normally we've been good at making a stand at that point, getting the ball back to our offense. We weren't at that particular time in the game. And again, it was little things, and it was everybody involved. It wasn't one position group. In the run game, it was leaky yardage here and there, 5 and 6 and 7 yard gains, and then an explosive play. So it was just, it definitely wasn't our finest moment. In those situations, we usually stood up and delivered. And we've taken a close look on, just at the whole picture of when we weren't good, why. And so it was everybody involved. It was gap control, it was pass rush lanes, it was secondary support on the run as well. So we had a great opportunity at that point, and we did not deliver. So we're going to go back and look at all that as we already have, and when we get into those situations again, we need to be able to make a stand.
Is leaky? You talk about leaky yardage. Is that when like a 2-yard gain becomes a 5 or 6?
It is. So we refer to leaky yards as we had opportunities to stop for 2 and 3 yard gains, and we either miss a tackle, run through a tackle, don't hold our gap. Somebody doesn't, somebody's not quite in the right proximity to make those tackles, and that happened a good bit the other night. And so we have to get back to the fundamentals of the game so that we are in a better proximity to make those plays. And again, that starts with me. They did a good job of tempo and some things to keep us off balance, which that won't happen to us again this year. We would be prepared for every tempo scenario moving forward, and that starts with me. We just didn't do a great job. It never felt like we were just in sync with that a lot of the night. And again, we'll learn from our mistakes and we'll move forward. But I think all of these type of things, quarterback run game, there was more quarterback designed runs than we had anticipated going into the game. Again, we have to do a better job of adapting and adjusting to that. But there were a minimum of, I think, 10 designed quarterback runs going into the game, which they hadn't previously shown. But that's our job. Our job is to, adjust to those moments. And so we'll do a better job moving forward, but that contributed to the leaky yards that you're referring to.
Now, the Georgia Tech quarterback rushed for 150 last week, so I'm sure he got your attention on that.
Yeah, he's
a pretty big kid.
He is. I remember him coming out of high school when I was doing TV. I remember when he had signed at A&M. Coach's kid, won a lot of games in East Texas as a quarterback. Really athletic, great in open space. Had a 71-yard touchdown run the other day. So he's a hand. He's a handful. So we're going to have to be able to make sure that we're really prepared for all of the quarterback run game scenarios that we know we'll see. And let's not bury the fact that his escapability on scrambles is there as well. He's much like the Schrader, the young man we played against Syracuse, right? So he's averaging almost 8 yards per quarterback scramble, and he scrambled 26 times. So he's just a tough, athletic, really good in space guy that we're going to have to always have a plan for.
Gene, to maybe take that a step further, when you have some of the things that happen Saturday night, like you've been talking about, do you almost expect, or do you expect the teams you face next to sort of use that as a template? Because teams are who they are, I know, but like mix in some of that stuff that gave you trouble. Like you find teams will try to use like the quarterback design stuff as a template moving forward against you guys.
Yes, we fully expect that. We fully expect that. And ironically, Georgia Tech just inherently runs a lot of the same things anyway this week. So we call it copycats. Georgia Tech doesn't have to copycat because that's kind of who they are anyway. But what we have found, at least what I've found over the last 2 years, is that anything that you're having trouble with that is sort of your kryptonite, you can expect to see it again at some point. So that's something that we fully expect this week because that's who they are. But with other teams who that might not be exactly who they are, but they'll make an attempt at it as well.
Gene, it's now 2 straight weeks you guys have forced a fumble on the goal line that has ended up being a turnover. Is that sort of a silver lining that you can take from Saturday? Is that on goal line you guys have been able to make potentially game-changing plays?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. Look, you're always trying to figure out when you have a performance that's not as desirable as you would like, you have to still pull out some things that were positives, right? One of the things that we talked about going into the season was just getting turnovers, no matter where they are on the field, right? But I feel like the one that Chapman had before halftime was huge. That was a huge play in the game. That was a huge red zone stop. Because I think excuse me if I'm not exactly right, I think it was 14-14 at the time, and it was
You're right.
about 3 minutes, 4 minutes before halftime. And that's a huge momentum swing, right? A huge momentum change. That was a great play by him. So there are some things like that we can build on. Preferably, we don't wish that we were down there. You know what I mean? But when we get down there, we have to put a premium on making red zone stops, and that was a huge one. Not only the fact that, that we got the stop down there, but to me, before halftime, that was a huge deal. So we are going to continue to look at, ways that we can still, improve on, getting turnovers. But again, I think that was a big deal at the time.
Matt mentioned the wide receivers that you guys are going to face, maybe some of the fastest you've seen this year in Georgia Tech. 3 of their top 4 guys are all under 6 foot and kind of have that shifty slot move to themselves. I guess what kind of challenges are you facing so many guys who kind of have that same move present to you guys?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's been a really good mix over the last several weeks of several 6'4", 6'5" guys that are, and then you have kind of your other shifty guys that have been sprinkled in there. This seems to be kind of a complete change, right? It's like they're all 6 foot guys with the exception of maybe one, and they're all extremely fast. Like they have documented really fast track times from high school. So they're very fast guys. It is challenging. Those guys can operate in space. They've got the ability to run by you, and they have the ability, because of the way they're built, to operate in short areas, in short and medium routes as well. So it's going to be a huge challenge. This offense, the only thing that's ever slowed them down is, if they turn the ball over, So they've got a great athletic ability on the perimeter. They've got an extremely athletic quarterback right now that can really make you pay if you are a guy short on the quarterback run, or you don't have your pass rush lanes balanced up. So it's challenging all the way around. If this guy's speed on the perimeter, it'll be as good or better than Miami in terms of just flat out speed.
Kind of to go off of that point with the speed, what kind of makes, I know you talked about some of the size of the Georgia Tech receivers compared to maybe the ones that Miami had, but they still had the trait of kind of being quick and things like that. But I guess in either scenario, what's kind of the key elements of really containing that speed and not allowing for some of those explosive plays to happen in that secondary?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance on, you know, making sure that you can cover all of the, you know, short area routes, all of the, you know, kind of medium, you know, those 10 to 15 yard routes, and still protect yourself from getting run by. You know, that's the tricky part of it, right? So I think in those scenarios, it's really important for the underneath people that are actually, you know, in the coverages to understand how to play these guys based on where their help is. So obviously, you know, you can play a guy more aggressively if he knows he's got help where, you know, he doesn't have to worry so much about getting beat deep because he's got help over the top. And that way you can get your hands on your, you know, we call it putting your hands on your coverage more, and things of that nature where I can be a little bit more aggressive underneath. So we'll have to do, you know, a good job of just understanding the coverages and, you know, where I have help, where I don't have help, and things of that nature. But, you know, the best trait of a DB is a guy that understands when he has help, you know, being able to use it. And then, you know, if you don't really fully understand that, it's hard to cover a guy on every short route, every medium route, and every deep route when, you know, you have 100 yards of field and 53 yards wide, right? So using your help and playing to your help is a huge part of, you know, these guys succeeding on Saturday.
Going back to Armani, he made, he also, I think, had the strip
He did.
on the phone with the goal line. He had a pick in an earlier game. He's got a lot of experience. Tayon didn't play much there tonight. Has Armani maybe leaped him in that rotation there? And are you at a point where his experience and his understanding of what you're doing have kind of met at the same point?
Yes, they have definitely meshed together. You know, it's hard to argue production. Nobody out there has played perfect. But when you are out there, are you making plays? Well, Chapman had a great pick against Minnesota at a critical time in the game. Then he had a really nice interception the other night at a critical time in the game. So he is starting to produce. I think he's getting a better feel for everything that we're doing. That, combined with the amount of experience that he already has, is starting to show up. So that's why he's getting more reps as we go. You know, he's starting to gain the confidence of everybody, you know, around him. And when he gets on the field, he's been productive. So we expect his reps to continue to grow. And again, you know, young guys in there like Tayon, he is a very talented young guy, but he doesn't have the same amount of experience, right? So you have to have a good balance in there. We don't have a lot of depth at the corner position right now. So we've got to be able to find out what the best balance is. And Saturday night, because the way you saw the amount of plays that Chapman had versus Tayon, it's about, you know, what's happening in the game, who's producing, how are you playing, are the moments too big, all of those things. And we're not saying the moments were too big for anybody. We're just saying that when your production shows up, you get what you earn. You get those reps, and he's, so far to this point, really growing in that regard.
Gene, go ahead. Come.
You talk about the power of proximity. How did that play into the defensive execution against UVA, especially in some of those crucial third down situations?
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't as good. We weren't as sharp as we had previously been. You know, putting yourself in a position to make a play on third down, putting yourself, you know, in a better position to eliminate some of the explosive plays. We gave up way too many explosive plays, and that simply is about, you know, executing and putting yourself in a position to do that. So, wasn't happy with where we were. We'll go back to practice tomorrow, and we'll really, you know, talk about executing at a higher level, because we did not do that. And again, that starts with me, but power proximity Saturday night in certain critical moments was not what we expect, and we need to do a better job of it. We need to do a better job coaching it, and we need to do a better job executing it.
To wrap up with that.
Thank you. We were talking to Rucker after the game the other night, and he was sort of just rolling through, listing off ways you need to be better, things you have to be better at. And he happened to say, he was saying whether it's this, whether it's that, he happened to say whether it's positivity on the sideline, which sort of perked my ears up a little bit. I was going to ask him about it. I know you're in the box. Do you think there was, I don't know, a fragmenting that happened that hasn't happened to you guys so far in terms of just sort of getting out of your heads a little bit and getting mad in a non-productive way? Do you think, did you see any of that? Did you sense any of that? Like, where do you come down?
I did, that's a great question. I didn't sense that because I really, even though I'm up there, I really try to keep a beat on what's happening down there, right? So I didn't sense that. Again, he's probably going to be a better guy to ask.
Yeah.
But in some of the heat of the moment things, I mean, you know, just like you and I or anybody, you know, sometimes we can get frustrated and things can happen, right? But, and I'm not saying there might not be an isolated incident where that did, but I can assure you overall, as a whole, that was not the case. That was not the case. There's not going to be fragmenting. There's not going to be division. There's not going to be any of that. And that's just not happening. So is there moments of frustration where that could have happened here or there with a player or so? Yeah, that's what happens when you're not being as productive as you know you can be. That's human nature. But I can assure you as a whole, that will never be the case.
What has been, to go off that, a lot of older guys on this defense, a lot of guys who expect a lot of themselves in the defense. Mm-hmm. Like, what have you seen as sort of a collective reaction yesterday? Well, you haven't seen them today, but what have you seen as sort of a collective reaction from them coming out of Saturday night? What have you picked up?
The first word that comes to mind is disappointment. And we spent a lot of time before we went over the film yesterday just talking about disappointment, talking about, you know, we're grown men. You got a room full of alpha males. And you know what? Everything's not always going to be perfect. You're not going to like it. You're going to be disappointed. But we can only change the behavior and the traits and the habits of what we do moving forward. And, you know, I told them that, you know, with disappointment and pain, there always has to come growth. Because if there's no growth and there's no, you know, if you don't get anything out of the pain and disappointment, then all of the pain and disappointment is in vain. And so we're not going to live that life. We're going to take the pain and the disappointment, we're going to grow for it, and we're going to be better moving forward. But this is a man's game. And it's played by, it's a man's game, and you know, it's not always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So they understand where I'm coming from. They understand my messaging. And like I told them, it wasn't players, it was coaches and players. It was all of us. Just like it's all of us when we win. So it's not one group, it's not one position, it's not one coach, it's not one player, it's everybody. That's why it's the greatest team game on the planet, because you got to get 11 dudes doing the right thing all the time. That's really hard to do. So our job is to make sure that we get 11 guys in a better position next week than we were in the previous. But we're going to move forward. We're not going to look back. We're going to take the pain and disappointment. We're going to make sure that we grow from it, and we're going to move on, because that's what men do, especially in this game. Because this game it'll humble you quick. And we got humbled. So that's it. We move forward and we keep moving.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.